I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. Ooh. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, I'ma keep winning, but you only go.
What's going on, guys? Jake came back with another video, and today I'm going to be looking at the Godfather mock drafts and the NFL draft, Mel Kiper's first round two mock draft 2.0, and today is the combine. The defensive line is going to be going today, and this was his they put out right before the combine. I've heard there's some pretty interesting things that happen in this one, but before we get into it, please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agree or disagree with that I talk about, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content I'm going to be putting out, whether it's NFL Combine that's coming out this week, NFL Draft, free agency, stuff like that. Make sure to subscribe to make sure that you're up with my latest NFL content. So, looking at this in the Mel Kiper draft, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. At number one, he actually has Abdul Carter. This has been the debate. A lot of the sources right now before the combine, I guess we'll see what leaks after the combine, is saying that the Titans are going to take best player available, Abdul Carter, or they might even trade out at this point. But in my opinion, I do think that they're going to go Cam Ward or try to trade out of this pick for somebody that's going to try to trade up for a quarterback, whether it's the Giants, whether that is the Las Vegas. But in this situation, that he has the Titans go Abdul Carter. I don't hate it. Abdul Carter is the best player in the draft, in my opinion, the best all around. Number one on what would be my big board and a lot of people's big boards. And they're pretty much just trying to get more talent on that Titans team that definitely struggled last year. Not Zach, Brian Callahan is looking to pretty much stay with Will Levis for another year, or maybe even bring in a free agent quarterback to be able to battle. And then next year they'll probably look for the franchise guy and commit to him. But Abdul Carter, best player in the draft, you pretty much just go with the best guy. Number two, it's interesting. Not a lot of people have been having this one. Cleveland Browns taking Cam Ward. They are in that Deshaun Watson contract, which is pretty much the worst, one of the worst contracts in NFL history. Who knows if he's going to be ready to play next year? He's had setbacks and it's Achilles, so the rumor is and the report was that he's going to be out all next year. In my opinion, I do think Cleveland is going to go with a free agent guy that they're going to be able to pick up and kind of just give a chance and then wait till next year. I think that's what we're going to see a lot of teams do in this year's draft since the QB class is so bad. But in this one, Cam Ward falls to you right here at number two. Titans don't take him, so they're pretty much just gonna go ahead and take their franchise guy and let Deshaun Watson sit, and then eventually, hopefully, move on to him and I guess just eat that massive contract that they have with him and let him go. Cam Ward has all the tools. In my opinion, he's the best quarterback in this class. He has great ball placement. He makes a lot of plays. He just needs to cut down the turnovers. But every team he's gone to with three different teams, three different systems, he's made the team consistently better. So, in my opinion, if I'm taking a quarterback, I'm taking Cam Ward first. So, Cleveland goes ahead and just gets their franchise guy. I can't hate it. Number three, the Giants passing on Shador Sanders. This is what I had in my mock draft recently. If you haven't seen that, please go check it out. But they end up taking Travis Hunter. Giants just need talent. Brian Dable and Joe Shane are on the hot seat. If they have another bad season, they are going to be fired and they're going to be let go. So they're pretty much just trying to get talent to come out and win. And Travis Hunter does that. They give them he gives them talent on both sides of the ball. I think the Giants are one of the few chances that Travis Hunter would actually have to be able to go and play both sides of the ball, just because they need that much talent. And to be able to spot him next to Malik Neighbors would be good. Kiper also does mention in here the Giants is kind of rumors that they might end up trying to go with Matthew Stafford and trading for Matthew Stafford. It also mentions maybe signing Sam Darnold in free agency and him going back to New York to the Giants instead of the Jets. And he could be a serviceable bridge quarterback for him. Brian Dable has been known for working with quarterbacks over the years. Josh Allen mainly is the famous one, so maybe he'd be able to get something else, Sam Darnold, for a year to save his job and allow him to be able to get the chance to draft the next franchise quarterback for the Giants next year. New England Patriots going with Will Campbell, offensive tackle LSU. In my opinion, I'm not a big fan of Will Campbell. I wouldn't take him this high. If I was taking a tackle this high, it would be Kelvin Banks. But the Patriots, this is the worst case scenario for them. They're hoping Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter ends up falling. But it makes sense. They're going to go get protection for Drake May. Free agency is really what's going to tell what the Patriots do. And if they go out and sign a whole bunch of offensive linemen and receivers, then they're probably prepared to take Mason Graham. If they go out and sign just a bunch of receivers, then they're probably going to take offensive line to be able to help Drake May. So, I mean, I don't hate it. You're getting protection for your franchise quarterback. I'm just not, me personally, a big Will Campbell fan. I know the NFL, the reports are that the NFL and a lot of the scouts and teams are a lot higher on Will Campbell. But the biggest question this week on Sunday will be answered is what's his measurables, and are teams going to view him as a guard or a tackle in many situations? Number five, Jacksonville Jaguars. They're taking the third best player in the draft, Mason Graham. Their rush defense was one of the worst in the NFL. And on the interior, they do have their two edge pieces in Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen. So they're pretty much shoring up the defensive line and getting a very solid starter for him in Mason Graham that could develop into a star defensive tackle. In this draft, I could see them potentially going offense, but a lot of these guys have had Tetero McMillan falling down the board, like James Jeremiah, Mel Kiper. So we could be seeing some crazy stuff with Tetero McMillan falling down and maybe going even later in the draft because maybe a lot of teams are starting to have a little bit of questions about him. But Mason Graham, sure up that defense line, take the best player on the board. And then this one's pretty crazy. With Shador Sanders on the board, the Las Vegas Raiders are going Ashton Genty. I will say, in my opinion, the Raiders are one of the least talented teams in the NFL. So it makes sense that they just need talent overall. And Ashton Genty in a bad draft class that's just full of a bunch of starters, it wouldn't be bad to take a running back high, but that's really the Raiders. Is that really what they need? They really kind of need quarterback, and Shador's on the board. He does say in here that Pete Carroll could use his Seattle connection, and they could go out and get Russell Wilson, or they could look to bring in a Sam Darnold, somebody else like that. And there was a report today that Tom Brady conveniently, with air quotes, ran into Matthew Stafford at the ski resort and talked about it. I don't, obviously they had that plan. They're trying to cover their butts on it. But the Raiders taking Genty, they definitely do need talent everywhere. But I think that, in my opinion, I would take another position here, not as valued as running back, especially with their team not being as talented. Genty might not thrive in that situation because they don't have that as talented team. But you're pretty much just trying to prepare whoever your next franchise quarterback's gonna be in the next year or two. Number seven, New York Jets take Shador Sanders. They fall into his lap. This is the question here. If Shador falls to you as the Jets, do you take him at seven? In my opinion, as a Jets fan, I would hate this. I would want them to go another direction and not take quarterback. But what are you gonna do if they're looking for the franchise guy? Aaron Glenn wants to go out and get a quarterback. I'm not the biggest fan of Shador, so this would be one of my least favorite options that the Jets could go as a Jets fan. And I think he just creates a lot of pressures for himself. He holds on to the ball too long. I don't know if it's gonna work out in the NFL. Maybe him being on bad run teams and not having a lot of help could help him out the next level. Just having that experience, so he's used to it. But I don't know how this will work. I don't really necessarily like this pick for the Jets. I would go in a different direction, like a Tyler Warren or one of the edge rushers for him, maybe even a Will Johnson. But they're moving on from Aaron Rodgers, so are you gonna do a bridge quarterback in Tyrod Taylor, or if they fall in love with Shador, then I could definitely see him picking him if they end up falling in love with him if he's on the board here. Carolina Panthers go Jalen Walker, linebacker out of Georgia. He's definitely going to be drafted as a edge rusher. Now, I don't. This is a little bit high for me, in my opinion. I would go with one of the other guys, maybe a Mike Green or somebody. I think Jalen Walker could go. I think he's more of a mid first round to early 20s type guy in the first round. So like to the Cardinals around 16. This is a little bit high for me, but if you like the guy, you go ahead and take it. And the Carolina Panthers definitely do need defense. Their first round pick should definitely be defense because they had one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And they just need more talent on that defense to improve it. Bryce Young actually started coming to his own, and their offense started to do pretty good towards the end of the year. So they just need defense talent to try to go out and get a stop that's not going to cost them games. So it just makes sense if they like Jalen Walker, they're going to end up taking him. And he could be kind of like that inside linebacker type guy and then bounce out in certain sets to be the edge rusher, kind of like how he used at Georgia. But I do think that most teams are going to try to use him as an edge rusher. This one's interesting. The New Orleans Saints go Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren's a dog. He's like that George Kittle type build. He's going to put his hands down the line of scrimmage, and he's going to block and receive for you. The Saints do need more weapons. They're getting older, and they have tons of salary cap hell, and they just cut Taysom Hill, so it makes sense for them to or they're expected to cut Taysom Hill. So it makes sense for them to kind of get his replacement. And a guy that's kind of similar to Taysom Hill, if you think about it, he lined up at Wildcat in certain situations. He played quarterback in high school. So he is pretty similar to Taysom Hill in a lot of these situations. So it does make sense. And Kellen Moore might want an offensive piece. But I do think that they're just trying to prepare for when they move on Derek Carr. Their roster is very aging, so they need to get a lot of young talent and kind of just get cheaper at a lot of points. So they're just taking, who they think is going to be the biggest impact. And with Kellen Moore having Dallas Goedert last year, he could play more of that role for the New Orleans Saints. Number 10, the Bears go Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons is an interesting one because he was seen as somebody that could potentially be offense tackle number one in this class if he never got hurt and missed the rest of the season with a knee injury. So he's going to be another one that's going to be a big deal on medicals, what team doctors think of him whenever they look at him. I do think it's very interesting that he's going over Kelvin Banks here, and he's offensive tackle number two at this point off the board. He's over Mimbu, he's over Kelvin Banks. So I wonder if this goes with Kiper sources. Maybe a lot of teams are actually starting to rise on Josh Simmons. It would make sense that the Bears go offensive line. I could see this being a Genty spot, but at this point he's off the board. So Ben Johnson's going to try to pretty much recreate Detroit and shore up that offensive line. I would assume here he has them saying that he's going to replace Braxton Jones, so I would assume that he'd play left tackle here, and they wouldn't move on from Braxton Jones whenever Josh Simmons would be ready. So it makes sense. You go ahead and try to protect Caleb, who was one of the most sacked quarterbacks last year. The 49ers would be very excited about this. Will Johnson ends up falling to number 11. We've seen this on a lot of boards that a lot of teams are starting to have questions about him. He had a lot of injuries throughout his career, and he ended up teams are questioning his speed, so it's really going to depend at the combine how he does. Maybe teams are going to get that answered, and he's going to go back up some boards. He was like a consistent top five type guy a couple of months ago. Now he's kind of falling down to that mid first round area. But the 49ers would love this. They're losing Tre'Davious Ward, the free agency, and their secondary was kind of questionable towards the end of the year. And Robert Saleh coming in, I think he's going to try to get his sauce type guy, and pretty much get that number one corner. Number 12, Dallas Cowboys do go running back, but Genty's off the board, so they go Amarion Hampton. I do think that Hampton's going to go much higher than what people think. So the rumor is right now, and sources are saying that Hampton is a lot closer to Genty than what people think, and that most scouts believe that, and some even prefer what Kiper says here that some scouts and teams even prefer Hampton over Genty. So I think Hampton is going to go in the first round. I don't necessarily like the Cowboys fit. I think that they need help on defense, and they could go for that. But I could easily see them going Hampton, and I think he'd be a good fit there as well. But you know. I could definitely see him go running back with Rico Dow being a free agent, but I think they might go cheap there. But it kind of goes with Brian Schottenheimer and Mel Kiper's looking back to Marty Schottenheimer's offenses being very run heavy and kind of depending on how the Cowboys were last year, they just weren't explosive enough. Was hurt, Dak was hurt, so they're just trying to get more weapons on the offensive side to make it easier. And they've been missing a running back ever since Zeke got older, so they're trying to get that next young Zeke type running back in there from and going with Hampton, who's rated a lot higher than what people are going to be thinking. I mean, the Miami Dolphins are trying to protect Tua, what they need to do, and they're going to take Armand Membu. He is probably going to play guard, in my opinion, in this situation. And the Dolphins could lose both guards in free agency with Robert Jones and Eichenberg both being free agents. So they're going to pretty much go and get the replacement to try to protect Tua. Armand Membu is a different type of offensive lineman. He has a crazy first step and has a very good pass pro. In my opinion, I would probably rate him the third best offensive lineman in this class to me. And he does great in the outside zone scheme, which is what the Dolphins run, and the 49ers pedigree pretty much runs with Shanahan. So Mike McDaniel, all they run is the outside zone pretty much and the zone scheme. So he would fit in perfect there. And so it makes sense. He's the type of offensive lineman that fits into that scheme. And the Dolphins need to pretty much get a new guard to pretty much step in, and they get Elijah Vera Tucker type build in Armand Membu. Indianapolis Colts go Malachi Starks. They do need safety help. I do think that they could look to go another area though, with maybe an edge player to go with Latte Latu. Or they could end up going with a receiver that's still on the board. If Tedero McMillan's still on the board, I think that would be a amazing pairing for them. I don't know why they would pass on McMillan, he even says here that that could be the move at receiver, but Starks probably makes more sense, especially because the receiver options available in free agency. So he's kind of predicting that they go maybe like a Amari Cooper or somebody in free agency instead of drafting one. Malachi Starks is somebody that's kind of fallen down boards. He didn't have the best year last year in college, so he's kind of started to fall down a lot of boards. But I do think that it does fit very well with the Colts. He fits into that scheme with what they need, and Julian Blackman being a free agent, so it makes sense. I just think that they go in another direction with a different draft pick, maybe an edge or a receiver, especially with McMillan still on the board. Atlanta Falcons go Mike Green. Mike Green's one of my favorite players in this draft. I think that he could potentially even go top 10. He led college football in sacks. He led it in tackles for loss. He dominated everybody at the Senior Bowl, and he's done everything. And he rose up a lot of boards. He was kind of that fridge first rounder a couple months ago. Now he's solidified himself in the middle of the first round. And right here, the Falcons, they need defensive line help. They've taken offense last 4 years in a row. So they definitely do need to be able to go and get defensive help for that team. Same thing saying here with Shamir Stewart, Arizona Cardinals. They have a very bad defensive line. They need interior defensive line edge players. And same thing could be said with Shamar Stewart. The upside is what's going to get him picked so high. He has amazing upside, and he dominated the Senior Bowl and rose his stock. Everybody kind of seen him as a run stopper only. And at the Senior Bowl, he showed off his pass rushing skills, and he was able to dominate pretty much everybody. It is interesting that Michael Williams was falling this far. But I think the upside of these two guys and the dominance that they've shown at the Senior Bowl definitely kind of put him over them. And I can see that's probably why. Speaking of it, Michael Williams going 17. This is a guy with all the traits in the world. I think he's going to blow up the combine tomorrow with the defensive line going tomorrow, or today, actually, on Thursday. And Michael Williams has all the traits in the world. He's like a Trayvon Walker type build that got picked number one a couple of years ago because he has all the upside and all the tools. He's a freak, 6'5", 260, and he didn't really show a whole bunch of dominance, but the Bengals just need talent on defense. They had a terrible defense. All they had was Trey Henderson pretty much, and they're looking to pretty much get somebody on the opposite side that could win on one-on-ones, and potentially they could develop him into being one of the best pass rushers in the league one day with all those tools that he has. He's just very raw athlete at this point. Seattle Seahawks are going to get one of my favorite prospects in this class, and Tyler Booker, guard out Alabama. This is a guy that started for 3 years in the SEC at Alabama, was a two-time SEC All-American his sophomore and junior years, and he plays with that aggressiveness that not a lot of the offensive linemen in this class play with. And I really like him. He really just mauls guys in the middle. And the Seahawks definitely do need guard help. Laken Tomlinson's going to be a free agent, so he's going to slot right in there at guard. I know that they probably do want to get a tackle too because Abraham Lucas has been struggling. So if he continues to struggle, they want to get somebody there. But Tyler Booker doesn't really have that tackle flexibility, and Armand Membu's off the board. So Tyler Booker is going to be a great guard in there to play next to Charles Cross or whatever side they play him on, and he's going to be very well in Seattle to shore up that interior. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers here, they go Jahad Campbell. A lot of people have had him falling, and Mel Kiper still has him at 19 from what he's hearing. Chris Godwin's going to be a free agent, so he's probably going to go somewhere else. And McMillan's probably too much of a Mike Evans similarity to be able to combine with Mike Evans. So it makes sense here that they go defense. They're pretty much looking for the Devin White replacement ever since he pretty much fell off the earth and didn't do as good as what he had been doing whenever they had that crazy Super Bowl run. And Jahad Campbell would pretty much fit in there. A lot of people think that he's going to do very well at the combine this week as well, whenever the linebackers end up going. So they're pretty much replacing, getting someone next to Vontae David while he's getting older and eventually step into that role once he ends up retiring and hanging it up. The Denver Broncos are getting Colson Loveland. The Broncos are just going to try to get Bo Nix weapons, whether it's a running back, whether it's a receiver, whether it's a tight end. And at this in this instance in this mock draft, Kiper has them going with Colson Loveland, who's more of that Brock Bowers type role, and Sean Payton, he thinks that Sean Payton would end up loving him and using him kind of as a joker that can use him at several different positions. He's mostly going to line up in the slot, kind of like how Brock Bowers does, and he's a very gritty, type tight end from Michigan, and he's very good at receiving. So it'd be a great security blanket for Bo Nix to pretty much use it in the passing game, and help develop Bo Nix into the second year. The Pittsburgh Steelers is very interesting. The first receiver off the board in this draft is Emeka Egbuka, and Emeka Egbuka is great after the catch. He could go very well with Pickens, whether they end up trying to move on from George Pickens or they end up pairing him up with George Pickens. But Emeka Egbuka is definitely that short yardage yak guy that's going to go and make a ton of people miss and go get a bunch of yards. It is interesting that he's the first receiver off the board, but Kiper mentions that a lot of teams are kind of starting to fall in love with Emeka Ibuka and just loves his play style. So he's starting to move up a lot of these boards, and this would be very shocking if McMillan kind of falls down the board this far. And Ibuka does really end up getting picked over him. I would be very shocked on draft day, but it seems like it's starting to become something that happens over this cycle for the next couple of months. And the Los Angeles Chargers, speaking of him, is Teddy McMillan. He's kind of that Mike Evans type build. He's 6'5", crazy speed, crazy length, crazy catching ability. And the Chargers would love this. If he fell into the Chargers' lap, Jim Harbaugh would be laughing the entire time because of his ability to be able to pair him up with Justin Herbert in that run game that they already have. And to pair him up with Lad McConkey, and McMillan would be the number one receiver with Lad being in the slot most of the time. It would be a crazy pairing, and I think this would be a very fun fit for him. And to be able to take over and kind of be like that Keenan Allen for the Chargers that they've missed ever since he's kind of gotten older and they had to let him go. I think this would be the perfect fit for McMillan. I just don't think he's going to fall this far. I think this is pretty drastic for where he's been. And people have him even in the top five going all the way at number four to the Patriots. But Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper both have him falling into the 20s. So there's got to be something there. There's got to be some truth there with a lot of scouts trying to make him fall. And not a lot of teams like him. So there's got to be something there that we're going to end up getting with some report in the next couple months until the draft. 23, they go with Isaiah Thomas from Florida State. This is a corner that is a very big body type corner. They are probably going to move on from Jair Alexander, probably trade him away. So they're looking to pretty much get his replacement. And this is a good man-to-man, very lengthy, huge corner that's going to do very well at the combine because he has some crazy athletic traits. So the Green Bay Packers just get their Jair Alexander replacement. Number 24, the Vikings, they get Gray Zabel. This is a guy that ended up rising up a lot of boards and was probably the biggest winner from Senior Bowl. He dominated at Senior Bowl and showed that even though he went to an FCS school, he was able to dominate against every level. And the Vikings need to shore up their interior offensive line, so he's probably going to play guard in this situation. And he could potentially move over to center in 2 years. The Vikings, after giving up 8 sacks in the Rams game, they need to just ensure up that interior offensive line. The Houston Texans also struggled in the playoffs against the Chiefs, giving up a ton of sacks to Stroud. They get Kelvin Banks, who's fallen all the way down to 25th here. Kelvin Banks is one of my favorite offensive linemen in this class. I would play him at tackle. A lot of people think that he's going to end up being a guard. I don't know. I would definitely play him out at left tackle. But the Texans here in this situation with Laremy Tunsil, he would definitely be playing guard, and they would sure up the interior. Kenyon Green, their first round pick a couple of years ago, has been awful, so they're going to move on from him. And he's going to step in and protect Stroud and try to keep him upright so that the Chiefs game doesn't ever happen again. The Rams, they're going to be taking Josh Connerly. They've allowed their guard to end up looking for trades. They've also have Note Bloom, their left tackle. It's going to be a free agent. And who knows if they're going to be trading Matthew Stafford. I do think one thing I want to mention, if they do end up trading Matthew Stafford, I would not be shocked if Jackson Dart gets taken here at 26. I would not be shocked if they end up taking and pulling the trigger on Jackson Dart if they like him a lot, and that's going to be very telling if they do trade Stafford. If they trade Stafford to try to get cheaper, I think at 26 they're going to take Dart. But in this situation, they haven't traded him yet, so they're going to end up taking Josh Connerly to try to replace No Bloom in free agency and try to get protection for Stafford. And he's getting very older, so you don't want him getting hit. The Baltimore Ravens at 27, they're going to go safety and go Nick Emawari from South Carolina. He's a huge safety, 6'3", 227 pounds. It's another guy that's going to test out well at the combine. And here, he would be a great fit with Kyle Hamilton. And Mel Kiper's kind of comparing him to Kyle Hamilton, who kind of fell in the laps of the Ravens a couple of years ago. So they would pretty much have one of the best safety combos in the league and the best secondaries in the league if they paired him up with Kyle Hamilton. Detroit Lions go outside linebacker and potential edge rusher Olu Aladero. I don't know much about him from UCLA, but this is the first time I've seen him mocked in the first round. A lot of times he's in the second round. And let's see what he says here. He says a number of injuries to the defense seemingly dooming the otherwise dominant team. The Lions never had a clear number two pass rusher. Darius Smith had 4 sacks over 8 games, but no edge rusher. So they would be taking him an outside linebacker here to be that pure number two edge rusher next to Aiden Hutchinson. I do think Detroit's a sneaky team to take offensive line with Kevin Zeitler being a free agent, but they do need to get that pure dominant pass rusher next to Aiden Hutchinson, so he's not taking up all the double teams very much. Washington Commanders going Maxwell Harrison. They needed secondary help badly. He mentions here that they could pursue T. Higgins in free agency, and their secondary was awful. Their run game was awful. They just need more talent on defense. And this is a pick to kind of watch. I see some people are looking at Myles Garrett could potentially be traded to. So we'll see if that happens. This first round pick would probably be the Browns in this instance if he does end up getting traded to the Commanders. But here they take Maxwell Harrison. He's one of the best man corners in this class, and he's rose up a lot of people's boards. Mel Kiper, I think, has him as one of the best corners in his big board. So it's a pure man to man to kind of go next to Marshawn Lattimore and help out that secondary and replace Emmanuel Forbes, who was released last year. Buffalo Bills also go secondary help. They go Jade Barron from Texas, and this is another guy that's going to test out very well at the combine. They ended up passing on Cooper DeJean last year, and the Bills in the playoffs against the Chiefs. Kymir Elam, their backup cornerback, had to step in, who they took in the first round a couple of years ago. Ended up just getting picked on the entire time. And they definitely do need secondary help. They could end up going interior defensive line too if Barron's off the board or one of the corners are off the board. So definitely does make sense that they need to replace Kymir Elam in that defense. And they just need secondary help in general with Micah Hyde retiring. 31, the Chiefs, they need offensive line help, so they're on Irsay from Minnesota. He's a huge guy that's going to end up playing probably left tackle in this instance. Then Joe Thuney would move back into guard. They're probably going to lose Trey Smith. And in that Super Bowl, that was one of the worst performances from Patrick Mahomes because he was getting pressured so much. And him just pretty much getting hit every play, they're going to look to upgrade the offensive line to try to protect Patrick Mahomes. That's what they did a couple years ago after that Buccaneers Super Bowl. They went out and drafted Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith and signed Joe Thuney. So they're probably going to do the same thing here this year again. And then lastly, the Philadelphia Eagles, they have Walter Nolan fall into their lap. They already have pretty much they pretty much already have Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter in there, but they're going to add Walter Nolan to the rotation and just take best player available and have someone fall in their lap. I do think Walter Nolan's going to go much higher in the first round. I have him mocked a lot of times to the Cowboys at 12, but one interesting person is Kenneth Grant not being in the first round in this one, but Walter Nolan's one of the best pure pass rushers. He rose his stock at the Senior Bowl as well to pretty much guarantee him in the first round, and the Eagles just pretty much sit back and one of the better players falls in their lap again, like they do every year. So this is my reaction to Mel Kiper's mock draft. This is definitely a wild one and with some crazy picks, but he has all the sources. So hopefully, we're gonna get more from him and Daniel Jeremiah to kind of combine them because they're the ones with all the sources from the NFL. They kind of tell us what teams are thinking about. So that's really why their mock drafts are very interesting. But please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agreed or disagreed with in the comments below so we can talk about it. And make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, feel like John Morant. Need a triple double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Morant. Need a triple double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't